Welcome back to Garage 31. Today I'm going to show you how to bleed your Shimano mountain bike brakes. So we got our 2.5mm Allen key in there. Turn that anti-clockwise. It's only about 3 rotations till it's loose. And here's a good tip for you. If you keep the Allen key in and then you tilt it sideways, you'll see that the O-ring comes off with the bolt. The O-ring essentially seals the system. If you just take it off straight up or if you don't take it off sideways, then the O-ring may still be in the brake on top of the bolt there, make it harder to get the bleed cap on, or it might fall on the ground and you'll lose it, and then you essentially don't have a sealed brake system, which is also useless. Okay, so I removed the bolt there, have my bleed cap plunger on the inside. There's an O-ring down the bottom here too to help it seal. Now these threads are just plastic, so you have to be really careful to get it in straight and to not over tighten. Once it gets snug, then just stop. And we can remove the plunger. There we go. That also has an O-ring on it too. Keep it sealed. So now we've got an empty bowl here. We'll fill that up in a sec. And then we can remove the old fluid that's in the brake before we can actually start to bleed the system. I got my mineral oil. I'm just going to pour that in top there. Almost to the top. So now we got this kind of pinky red clean fluid. So when we remove the old fluid from the caliper down, it's going to suck this new fluid in. The old fluid is probably going to be black, discolored. And then because it's dyed pink, we can visually see when the new fluid comes through from the caliper. Now another handy thing to have when you're bleeding your brakes is a bucket just below, so that any fluid that does fall out be captured in the bucket and you can discard it rather than getting it all over the floor. Okay, so we can start to bleed the system now. So we're going to remove this rubber cap, then we can put the syringe on. Now the Shimano syringe comes with this little black clip, and this is to hold the syringe on so we can service the rest of the brake and the syringe doesn't fall off. Now to put this on properly, you need to leave, a centimeter or so of hose sticking out so we can put the hose over the bleed nipple and then press the clip here over the top. Let me show you. So let me just focus it. So I can put the syringe on. You can see that the syringe is bottomed out there near enough. It's kind of falling off now because I'm not holding it. And then with a bit of pressure, there we go. So now the syringe is locked onto the nut there, the bleed nipple, and the syringe can just free hang from that point. So you don't need this part here, but it does make it a lot easier. Okay, so I got my 7mm wrench. This particular one's a 6-point, not really that important, just any 7mm. You could have put this on first and then put the hose on, and then the clip would hose the wrench on so you can kind of twist it, or you can do it just like this where you can put the wrench on here, a little bit of effort. So that was probably, 3/4 of a turn, maybe 1 full turn, less, maybe even less than that. That's all you need. You're just going to open the system. You don't want to remove that bolt because then you can't control the fluid and you potentially let air in. So just before we start to bleed, let's check everything. So we got our bleed cap on. It's full of fluid. plunger is removed, the master cylinder is up. We check the line, that's all good. We clean the caliper. We've got the syringe with the clip on, and it's about a turn loose. No more needed. Now we can actually pull back on the syringe. You can see the fluid wanting to come up. So I maintain my bikes pretty regularly, so this fluid isn't actually that bad. If you had really old fluid, you hadn't bled your brakes in a couple of years, this fluid would be black. And that's a good indication of you should have replaced your fluid a long time ago. Also, my brakes were running pretty decent before, so there's not really any bubbles coming out here, but you can kind of see how the volume of fluid coming out. Now you don't want to go too fast. You can just see some bubbles coming up there. Don't want to go too fast, just take your time. You also want to watch the bleed cup so that so it doesn't run out of fluid. If you run out of fluid, then you're back to square one again. So still just pushing on it, we're getting almost done. So if this fluid was still coming out black at this point, I would refill the bleed cup, empty the syringe here, because you can see we're kind of 3/4 of the way up, and then keep flushing from the bleed cup down into the syringe until it comes out clear. At this point, we're just trying to replace the fluid. We're not trying to bleed the brake. We'll get to that to the next step. This brake fluid's actually looking pretty good, so I'm just going to push it back through. So we'll start the bleed procedure. If you had to, if you're running out of oil at the top here, which mine's pretty close, then you would want to close the caliper back off with that wrench, clockwise. Take the syringe off, dispose of the fluid, put the syringe back on, open the system back up so that there would be an empty syringe essentially, and then fill the bleed cup up, repeat that process until the fluid comes out clear. But this is obviously, as you can see, it's pretty clear, so we're not going to worry too much about that. So now we're going to actually bleed the brake, and what's different about the bleed procedure is we then push fluid back through up to the bleed bowl, the bleed cup, suck it back down, push it back up. Repeat that 4 or 5 times, go nice and slow, so any trapped bubbles will either come out in the syringe or they'll come out in the bleed cup. So let me just push this back through nice and slow. Okay, so I'm just pushing the fluid back through nice and slow, see if any bubbles come out. I see the fluid getting higher. So pretty good. Like I said, my brakes were working decent before, so not really expecting there to be any bubbles, but now that the bleed cup's pretty full, I'm gonna suck it back through to the syringe here. Let's see if anything comes through. As the syringes age, they'll get a little bit sticky. Oh, there's one bubble there. Another one. So you can kind of see how slow it's going. Probably takes, 30 to 40 seconds to push it through one way. Just take your time and just make sure there's no bubbles in the system anymore. So I'm pretty confident there's no bubbles left in this brake. So I'm just going to push this through until the bleed bowl is almost full. Okay, so I'm pretty confident there's no bubbles left. I'm going to turn this clockwise to close it. Grab my 7mm wrench, put it on the fitting there, and just nip it up. It doesn't have to be tight, or super tight rather. You'll feel it ramp up pretty quick just after you that's kind of one finger there, just kind of as hard as I can, and that's pretty much all it needs. Then we can twist the brake line off. That fluid there is just from the syringe, not from the caliper. We'll clean that off in a sec. The bleed ball is all full. Looks clear. Now you might be thinking, great, let's put the pads back in, wheel on, go ride. But we're actually almost halfway through. We've got to service